Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Today we're going to do another episode of the Breaking Down Songs series, the place where we take a closer look at some of my favorite songs from all kinds of different bands and analyze the lyrics, because when we do that, we gain a deeper appreciation for the music we listen to. If there's a specific band you guys want me to talk about in a future episode of the series, please leave a comment down below. I'll check your feedback. Today we're going to analyze my favorite song from Jane's Addiction. Now, Jane's Addiction personifies an unusual band. That's not supposed to be a flaw, merely an observation you'll notice right away. There's nobody quite like them. Jane's Addiction almost has the mindset where we operate from our own odd little bubble, and we're fine with that. We're okay with that. They have unique titles for their songs and albums, flabbergasting lyrics, puzzling length choices for songs, weird release cycles. You could go on and on. Jane's Addiction can take a while to get used to if you haven't listened to them very much. You need time to warm up to what Jane's Addiction is all about. But once you do, you will unquestionably become a devoted listener. You'll be hooked for life. As a matter of fact, I believe that Jane's Addiction fans constitute probably some of the most fiercely loyal fan bases I've ever stumbled across. And that's saying a lot. So now let's get to my favorite song off each Jane Addiction album. We're only going to talk about studio albums, even though there's a compilation album sandwiched in there, released in 1997. We're not going to go over it though. We're just going to strictly stick to studio albums today. So I'm just going to go in order that the albums were released, since there's only 4 of them. I can't do my top 5, obviously. So, first up, from their debut album, Nothing Shocking, I picked the very last track, Pigs and Zen. A phenomenally demented send-off song ends the album on a high note. Next up, from Ritual D Low Habitual, I chose the succulent Obvious. I obviously had to pick that song. Couldn't go with anything else. Their first 2 albums just shattered expectations, blew everyone away. Reviewers went absolutely nuts. They couldn't believe how good Jane's Addiction really were. But unfortunately, then the band went on a long hiatus. They took a major break, and their presence gradually fizzled out of the mainstream. It sucks, because when you look at the view counts for some of their songs besides the singles, I'm not talking about the singles, the songs not part of the singles, they only managed to scrape together around 50,000 views, if they're lucky. That's being generous. Some of the songs that aren't singles barely have 20,000, 30,000 views. It's sad to see, after hearing how remarkable their songs are, how effortlessly Jane's Addiction transfix their listeners. You're shocked at how low the numbers actually are. You would expect them to be much higher, but they're not. So the long absence, as a result, hijacked Jane's Addiction's chance to take off. They never got that chance to take off, become one of the big boys. There just simply wasn't enough time. So, next up, from the Strays album, I picked the distinctly delightful Price I Pay. And finally, from the Great Escape Artist, their most recent studio album, I picked the song that will give you the ultimate thrill ride. I'm talking about Ultimate Reason. So, those are the contenders in this battle. In the end, I decided to go with Price I Pay. So that's the song we're going to dig into today. Try to figure out what that song means. Go behind the scenes of Price I Pay. Before we do that, let's get into some background off the Strays album, which Price I Pay originated from. This album graced us back in 2003. It was the third studio album from Jane's Addiction. Marked 13 years since their last studio album, so a big gap. Jane's Addiction went Jane Doe on us there for a while. Fortunately, all the original members returned to this new album, plus a new bass player named Chris Chaney. You had the singles Just Because, which became really popular, used a lot for video games and movies, and True Nature. Both of them are killer tunes. So this album went gold in the US and landed in 4th place on the Billboard Hot 200 charts. So not bad there. And despite some minor changes, which naturally comes with the territory when you have such an extensive gap between albums, the core of Jane's Addiction was still intact, luckily for us. So now let's get to the lyrics of Price I Pay. Before we do that, I just want to remind you that this is my interpretation of the lyrics. It's my opinion. My opinion might be different from yours, and that's fine. We all hear these songs differently. There's no right or wrong answer, no right or wrong way to view the lyrics. So let's respect each other's opinions. I'll also put a link down in the description below to Price I Pay if you want to listen to it. So let's get started with verse 1. Here we go. I always do the wrong thing, but for a very good reason. Always do it wrong, but it feels right. So forgive me now, and forgive me later. I'll pay you back. So this first section lets us know there's a person in the song completely shrouded in self-preservation mode. What I mean is they're completely concerned about their own well-being. That's their main objective. They have a compulsive type of personality. They act without worrying about the repercussions of their actions. So they're trying to cope with their mistakes by believing their heart was in the right place. They use that as an excuse to make themselves feel better. So let's move on to the next section, which goes, I always do the wrong thing, but I got a good reason. I always do the wrong thing, but it feels right. I always do the wrong thing, but I got a good reason. So section 2 basically reiterates the previous statements that I made, all of them. This section was virtually identical in terms of the message to the previous section. Not much difference there at all, besides a few words. So let's jump ahead to section 3, which says, I could have it, but I walked away. Now I won't miss out, not even one day. What I lost off the line, I bring back all in my good time. So this section, he or she wakes up, has a epiphany, I guess you could call it. They realize how much of their life ended up wasted because of the mistakes they made. Therefore, they come to the conclusion that they can't change the past, but they do wield the power to change their future, make a better future for themselves. They have that ability. They're going to start treating each day like it's their last, live each day to the fullest, all that jazz. So then we get to the chorus, which goes, there ain't no other way, because this is the price. It's the price, always the price I pay. Hey. So in the chorus, it tells us that in most cases, people learn lessons via the hard way. They witness some form of chaos that inspires them to turn their life around. The person in the song is going through that exact same situation. So then we go on to verse 2, which says, I see you, you're going places, so let's get the bleep out of here. I'm a big liver man at the table. I got my long bleep drawn. I'm able to lay you out. So, in verse 2, the person, he or she, this can go a few different ways. They might either be reminiscing about another regret, that happened in the past, or they failed to change. They're in the present, they wanted to change, they thought they could turn their life around, but they ended up screwing up again. Could go either way there. Maybe they fell back into the trap. It reveals that they have a combination, a habit of overestimating themselves and viewing the potential rewards as far greater than the risk, which basically leads the person down the slippery slope. That explains their actions, their motivation for why they do those things. Then we get to the chorus again. Then verse 3, I'm always having a good time, always searching for more. I'm flying now and paying later. I'm flying now. So the first part of verse 3 lets us know that this section will be pretty self-explanatory. This lets us know that the person in the song is an adrenaline junkie, someone who constantly chases the next high, and no matter how many times they crash and burn, no matter how many times their choices backfire, they still do the same thing. They can't break their habit. It sticks with them. Then we go on to the second part of verse 3, which says, I'm laying in a bath of hot water always my case, finally nothing to say, just put the cloth right over my face. So this section, I believe that the hot water signifies the wrath and judgment getting placed on them. They're so used to that at this point. They've been through it so many times, they just accept it like, whatever, let's get it over with. I don't have anything to say for myself. I can't explain what happened, but I know that I deserve it. So just do it. Then we get to the chorus 2 more times to close out the song. So now that we've discussed what the lyrics potentially mean, let's transition to the mood of the song. When you listen to Price I Pay, how does it make you feel? Well, this will depend on you. It varies from person to person. This song can be bittersweet if you're the emphatic type. If you care too much about other people, you might pity the person in this song, he or she, for failing to change their life. Or on the other side, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you might feel indifferent, like this person had enough chances to prove they were going to change and they didn't, so that's their fault, that's on them. They got what was coming to them. That's what they get. You might think that tough love will be the only way to get through to them. So, some variation there. It depends on you. So, let's move on to the most memorable line from Price I Pay. Well, I picked the line, I'm flying now and paying later. I love that line. I think it represents a good analogy to just express how drastically their perception switches, almost like a light switch, on and off before and after you get caught. The same can apply to other people, not just the one in this song. I'm sure you've noticed on social media before, I know I have, where someone does something awful, they either say or do something terrible, and at the time they find it amusing until all of a sudden their life gets wrecked and they suddenly claim they're sorry, they regret what they did. By then it's too late. So now let's discuss some themes from the song. The most prevalent theme was every action has a consequence attached to it. That philosophy was the origin of sayings we commonly use in our society, such as, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. The same concept here. The next theme was, you can't force someone to feel accountable for their actions. Of course, you can punish them. You think you're gonna inspire them to change their way of thinking, but you won't really do that, that punishment becomes negligible if the person doesn't feel guilty in the first place. If they feel like they did the right thing, if they don't feel any remorse or regret over what they did, then why would the punishment even have any effect on them? It won't. The final theme I noticed was that arrogance displayed in this song often results in a personal downfall. That untouchable mentality that so many people have leads to their undoing. So now let's transition to the strengths and weaknesses of Price I Pay. A lot more strengths than weaknesses. The first strength was the vastness of the track. What I mean by vastness is, put simply, vastness means that this song can be labeled as not really a ballad, but also not a hardcore song. A ballad with sharp edges might be fitting. This will appeal to both fan base segments, people who want the syrupy sweet song or the raging song. It appeals to both segments. The next strength is the really organic topic that Jane's Addiction chose to write about, that matches many listeners' personal experiences, I'm sure. The next strength was shifting the instrumentals during the song to synchronize with the tone of the lyrics, to match what the lyrics were saying. Throughout the song, you'll be aware of when the singer wants you to feel sorrow, the instrumentals will suddenly shift and become softer, more gentle. And then at the flying period, which was also in the song, the instrumentals suddenly crank up to become punchier, edgier. Overall, it's an impressively adaptive song. So, how about the weakness? Well, this is a minor complaint I have. The lyrics are just a tad repetitive, and even the new lyrics carry the same gist as the lyrics we heard before. Doesn't seem like the lyrics move things along smoothly. They just kind of say the same thing over and over and over. Makes its point too quickly. They could have added more background about how he felt while he was flying, or even elaborated some more in the chorus about what type of consequences he faced. The song could have used a little more variety when it comes to lyrics, but oh well. You shouldn't let that stop you from appreciating this song. Finally, on a scale of 1 to 10, how replayable is this song, Price I Pay? Fresh or stale? Well, again, this will depend on you, how much you love Jane's Addiction. If you're a new Jane's Addiction fan, then I would give it 8 out of 10. Like if this was the first Jane Addiction song you ever heard. Because I think we can all agree that the first two Jane's Addiction's albums were arguably stronger. They had a superior collection of songs on them. That's what was responsible for the band's rise to fame, those first two albums. So you might feel like on this album, Jane's Addiction strayed too far from their roots. So I would recommend that if you're a new Jane's Addiction fan, you should start with a song off those first two albums and then maybe give this album a shot. That's my recommendation. Once you become an established Jane's Addiction fan, I think the replayability gets bumped up a little bit from an 8 to a 9 or possibly a 10. By then, you know what to expect. So that's all I have for you guys. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.